So this is As It Is, Volume 2, by Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, translated by Erik, Pema, Kunsang. And it's a collection of his speeches in front of audiences of students, his oral teachings. And so this is the last chapter of the book that we'll read together. There are other chapters. The information in them is a little redundant with what we've already read. So I think we're going to, after reading this chapter, fully cover his teaching. And this chapter is called Dining with Indra. So let's see his teaching. So Rinpoche says, without fixating on anything, leave awareness in unsupported space. Rigpa is unidentifiable. A reference point could be the notion, this is Rigpa being sustained. If there is a reference point, a focus, there is no transparency like the openness of space. When you aim a rifle at a target, that is called a reference point. How are you going to aim at the sky? There is no focus to target. If there is an objective like, now this is Rigpa and I am aiming at it, it becomes conceptual, confined. To repeat, there are 3 characteristics of Rigpa: freely resting by not imagining something as being there, the pervasiveness of not focusing on something within, and the unimpededness, the total openness of not placing yourself in any sort of state in between. And that's similar to instructions that Longchenpa gave. Not deliberately attempting to conceive any state. Not exactly in the content, not exactly in the space, not exactly in something in between. Resting in presence, which naturally shows itself. Any attempt or effort to produce that state is nonsense, because it's not a state. It can't be produced. You can't get closer to awareness, and you can't get farther from awareness. You rest and it holds you. When there is a change in state, if something is different that wasn't there before, then it's probably conceptual. If there's resting and there's recognition that it's always been that way, then it's probably non-conceptual. If there's attachment to that, then there's attachment to that. If there's not, then there's resting. So Rinpoche says, here is a very important statement in the Bodhichara Avatara by Shantideva that expresses the final view of the middle way. And the verse goes, when concreteness or inconcreteness does not remain before the intellect, at that moment there is no other mental form. And so there is utter peace without conceptions. And so not analyzing, neither falling to biases of substantiality or emptiness, conceptual emptiness, not analyzing objects to be empty, when it's not a question of that. In order to analyze, there has to be an object of the analysis. Even analyzing an object to be empty isn't really real emptiness. It's an analytical facsimile. That's why the instruction here is to rest. Always rest. Rest in awareness. You're already done. No need to analyze or do anything. Rest, let things be. If you don't create mental forms, then there are no mental forms. If you are creating mental forms, rest with creating mental forms. Don't try to not. Let it be. Don't try to pretend that you're not creating mental forms. If the world feels substantial, it's of absolutely no utility at all to pretend that it doesn't. Sit with it. Be with it. However it appears is just a reflection of your own belief. Be with your actual belief. There's no one else to outdo by showing how much better analysis you have. It's just you. So it's radical honesty, really seeing how it is for you. However it is, you'll see it, and you'll keep seeing it until it liberates. So Rinpoche continues. In the notes on the commentary to the text Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo, the illustrious master Ju Jamyang Dragpa explained concreteness and inconcreteness as being the notions of existence and non-existence. In terms of experience, whether one holds the thought that Rigpa is a thing that exists or a thing that is nothing, both are thoughts. When not holding any notion, there is nothing else whatsoever held in mind. In other words, to be totally free of focus, free from fixation, is the real view. Nagarjuna said, to hold the idea that it exists is to be as deluded as an animal. But to hold the idea that it is nothing is to be even more deluded. Yeah, so that comports with what we've been saying, right? So Rinpoche says, one does not need to hold the thought that Rigpa is inconcrete, nor that Rigpa is an ongoing entity, because whether one thinks one way or the other, both are concepts. And both are stories, essentially telling yourself a story about some moment. You see, the problem with this, not to always be dissing on stories, is that a story that's latched onto and taken as real is an implied reference point. There's always a reference point in the story, if it's believed in. There's always someone doing something, some perspective from which the story is told, something that the story is told about. If the words are empty words, then there's no reference point. But if it's an expression of what is really believed to be happening, it's essentially a confession of what is being reified. So that's very helpful because you can see in the stories that you tell yourself exactly where the reference point lies. So just notice these stories. They're basically pointers. So as long as you're not in the concept of them, they point you back to freedom. So Rinpoche says, as long as there is some notion or reference point, it covers the nakedness, the original free state of openness, which is Rigpa. Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you, Yeshe. Oh, and Jamke is saying information is always redundant. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not too fixed on that. If nothing else pops up, then we can read one of the other chapters. And if something does, then we'll read that, I guess. However it happens. Any comments or questions? Oh, this one I think isn't redundant. Yeah, this chapter I think is, I skimmed it ahead of time and I think it's likely to be of interest to us. Some of the other ones are more about like magical powers expressed. Some of them are more lower yana stuff. Yeah, it's a good way to get followers. Shoot some fireworks out of your fingers or something. I could have been more creative with my magical powers. I never wished for any. Well, thank you everyone for staying a little extra. So I hope you got what you needed today. So let's dedicate. So there are sentient beings in this presence who are suffering. Any merit we may have generated here today, let's be with them and give it all to them in a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone.